All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is so great to see you. My name is Robin Camerote, and I am a leadership development trainer and consultant, and I'm also an executive coach. And we are going to talk today about leadership development programs, really why an organization would want to do them, what they're all about, and how you might develop or implement one in your organization. So I would love this to be pretty interactive. So if you have questions at all as we go through, don't hesitate to speak up or raise your hand. So we'll go ahead and jump in here. So for our agenda, I'm going to do some kind of brief introductions and kind of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. And then we have a quick warm-up exercise. Then I'll share a little bit of kind of my perspective on what it takes to really launch leadership development programs. I'd love to hear from you as well. And then we'll have a couple of minutes at the end for a discussion. So as we get warmed up today, I would love to hear from you in terms of really what the benefits you see to your organization for really increasing leadership or implementing these kind of programs. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go ahead and you can click on this QR code. This is a kind of an open-ended polling. Or you can go to the Menti site and enter the code. So I'll give you a moment to do that. And that's going to bring up a question there for you to answer, excuse me. So if I can just get a thumbs up from when you are into the Menti tool. You there? All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shelley. All right. So hopefully you see on your screen, what do you see as the benefits of leadership development? And I'll just give you 30 seconds or so to input some responses. Yeah, succession planning. You know, it's so interesting. And actually, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a webinar here about specifically focused on succession planning. And I feel like that's so important because we won't, certainly, none of us plan to be in our organizations forever. And those departures can be so disruptive. And so when you have people in place really ready to step up and kind of keep things going, it is so, it's so useful. And so, yes, Shelley, in the chat, I see just continual learning and improvement throughout the organization. Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. A great way to get started here. So, I wanted to share, just some of the ones that I see, and I'm sorry that graphic's a little bit fuzzy, but some of the benefits of leadership development programs. Certainly, we know that there are personal benefits, improved self-confidence and self-awareness, just that enhanced leadership skills and abilities, and that increased career opportunities that it offers us individually and it offers our teams. As an organization, as leaders, we also see building that leadership pipeline, so that succession planning, improved engagement and retention, and just increased organizational performance. Ultimately, we want leaders to be able to step up and really have an impact on mission, on our purpose, and on our bottom line. And there's this kind of intersection between what increased leadership can do between kind of achieving our strategic objectives, improving kind of operational function, and then those personal benefits to our career that we see for ourselves. So, I share this not because, for you all here on the call, you already believe this and you know this, but I include it because sometimes we're in the position of talking to other people or making a business case for why our organization should invest in leadership development. So I share these as maybe, some potential talking points, for making that case. So one thing that, just in terms of kind of breaking down what the components of leadership development programs are really intended to identify and nurture leadership potential, enhance those leadership skills, foster that sense of adaptability, and change management, that that we have teams that can kind of go with the flow and react and respond to changes in our organization, increasing that strength of the leadership network, improving employee engagement and retention, and then of course our organizational performance, as I just mentioned. So that's really the purpose, the driving purpose behind doing these leadership development programs, is really to touch on all of those key points. So one of the things I found fascinating, I think we kind of intuitively knew this, but then when I saw the data, I just thought this was so interesting, is that how do leaders learn? So there are all of these ways that we increase our skills and our competence professionally, and the formal education is really just 10% of that. So these, whether it's structured programs that we either kind of go to on site someplace or virtually, are really just a small piece of the puzzle. The bigger pieces are, 70% of that comes from having challenging professional experiences. When you go through something really difficult and you're in that position of just trying to figure it out, either by yourself or with a team, so much learning comes from that. And then 20% from those developmental relationships. If you think about coaches and mentors, those people that you can kind of step away from the work, get an external perspective, and get some feedback and just kind of opinions on guidance on what to do next, and those people that you view as role models. So I think this is helpful because a lot of times in our organization, we have this conversation about training and this need for training. And I think a lot of times employees feel like that is, when they think about that, they think about structured programs. And while those are absolutely important and play a key role, that's a lot of what we're talking about today. I think it's also helpful to kind of build that understanding that that's just one piece of the puzzle. We want to really look at all of that learning more holistically. So one of the things that, as a leader, kind of putting these programs in place, it'll help you kind of identifying and assessing that leadership potential. Like, where are those good candidates that you can use to kind of help step up into those positions when they're vacated or when the organization grows. Build those skills, create those mentoring and coaching opportunities, really be thoughtful about introducing experiential learning and practical, kind of how do you practically apply this learning to real problems that you're facing in your organization, and then that networking and relationship building. So I think those are kind of the key components that any really solid leadership development program would look at, kind of all of those pieces. So I'd love to hear from you today, whether it's in the chat or in back in kind of in the Menti polling tool, like, what are you doing today? And anything that's working or any gaps that you see. I'll give you a moment to kind of reflect on what's kind of, where are you right now? All right, I see one gap in terms of finding those hidden gems. So many people, it's hard to find the up and comers. I think this is a great point, especially in large organizations where you may work with dozens or potentially even hundreds of people. Really, how do you find those people that both have the aptitude and the capacity and also the interest in taking on these leadership positions? I think that can be really, really challenging. All right. Well, I think that is a great kind of segue into our, into this next piece. One of the things I love to include in these presentations, one, just because I'm personally interested, but I think other folks like yourself are as well, looking at some of the data, kind of back to that idea that whenever you're kind of making the case for investing in leadership development, I think it can be useful to look at some of these studies. But I thought this one from Gallup was pretty interesting. So that increasing or investing in leadership development experiences significantly boost employee engagement. And I think this is one thing that we don't often talk about kind of in the same conversation. Of course, we are very much focused on employee engagement and doing all kinds of things to reach out to employees, to have them feel involved and kind of understand where they're coming from. And then we kind of think about leadership development as separate from that. But when you really, kind of look at them holistically, that if you invest in leadership development, one of those key benefits is more engaged employees. And kind of the bottom line result of that is that those organizations outperform their competitors, according to Gallup, by 147% in earnings per share. So if you're in a for-profit environment, that's real tangible impact to the bottom line. If you're in a public sector or government organization, that would just be mission accomplishment. So that's pretty significant. Similarly, in this other study done by the Center for Creative Leadership, that investment is shown to return kind of 3.5 times more likely to outperform industry peers on those key financial metrics. So there is a real benefit to kind of a real return on that investment. And of course, the people who are kind of making the decisions to spend this money want to be able to have that tangible return. So a couple of thoughts in terms of implementing and sustaining leadership development programs. There are, whether you're kind of going outside or doing something internally, I think there are a couple of key steps to consider. So really planning and designing the program, securing that buy-in from those key stakeholders, and those include any prospective participants. Then, of course, implementing the program and evaluating and measuring that program success. So having a baseline in place that then you can look at your progress over time and really kind of demonstrate what that impact is. And we like to also think of these as, living programs, that you're making continuous improvements to them as you learn and as you get feedback on kind of what's sticking and what's not, and continually kind of refining the content and the delivery approach. I'll pause there. Any questions so far?
Hey, Robin. Not a question per se, but I've been thinking a lot lately. When you look at like an organizational structure, it's like a pyramid, right? You have your top leader, and then it broadens out with all the subordinate leaders. So not everybody can be a leader, and not everybody wants to be a leader. But sometimes the leadership training could be so beneficial for everyone. And so as I think your previous slide, you were talking about the engagement thing like that. I wonder if it's a stigma where we call it leadership training, and so some people don't pursue it. What if we called it people development, right? A people development program or something. I don't know where that's going. It's just the thought I've been having, and be interested to have your thoughts on that. The same training, but not necessarily to prepare you to take over as a leader, but just to make you a better human, a better worker, a better organizational employee.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, Rob, so I'm a huge fan, and one of the things I've been working on is a program called Leadership for All. I do think that, kind of playing around with the language would be really useful to kind of make it more appealing and accessible to everyone. But what we know is that the tenets of leadership benefit everyone, regardless of your role or your title. And having, just kind of increased kind of self-awareness, that, confidence in your ability to solve problems, to build relationships, like all of those things are so essential just for people development, as you say. So I'm a huge fan of that approach. And what that often means, though, because traditional leadership development programs are time intensive and they can be expensive. And so organizations tend to kind of be forced to pick and choose, those kind of top performers or those people that they believe are going to really stick with the organization. So there's absolutely a place for that. I think those are really important kind of piece of the puzzle. But to your point, I think another piece of this is taking a step back and saying, what are those core elements that we want everyone, regardless of their role, to have? and how can we expand those and get that benefit out to everybody. So I'm, yes, huge fan of that. And trying to find solutions that make it realistic for organizations to expand that training out for everybody. So kind of maybe decreasing the time and the cost investment so that it can be more accessible. So I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what I really wanted to talk about today is that sometimes I think we get stuck in our organizations, just given the number of choices that are out there in terms of leadership programs. That's, just the number of options can be a barrier, because you can, they kind of have a range of cost and time investments and all different kinds of topics. And that can be overwhelming to the point where we don't do anything. We kind of get stuck in either analysis paralysis or just kind of indecision about what the best path is. So what I wanted to offer was, kind of a thought process for how you might select the right one for you, for your organization. So the considerations are, of course, really assessing your organization needs and goals, looking at that program content and the curriculum, evaluating the delivery methods, looking at the duration and the flexibility in terms of the time required, and then, of course, the program cost and what that anticipated return on investment would be. So the questions that you might ask either yourself or if you're working on a leadership team to kind of explore these options, really kind of going back to whether it's a strategic plan or your mission and taking a look at like really what are our needs and our goals, maybe at this point in time, and how do we see those changing? So what is the gap that we're really trying to address with this training? So given those goals, what topics are most important to us? Just recently, it feels to me like there has been a sense of a gap around communications and conflict resolution. So one of the topics I've been training on a lot recently are those crucial conversations, internal communications, and those things. And so certainly a leadership component to all of those. But to Rob, to your question earlier, I think there's also some benefit for all employees there. But really, so communications might be one. There may be one around networking and relationship building, but there might be, some gap there that really helps inform what topics to focus on. I think the next question to consider is what delivery method best matches your participants' needs. So your organization and their interest in whether it's kind of in-person intensive, whether it's something online or a hybrid, whether something asynchronous where they're able to pull down content when they have the time versus, showing up at a prescribed time each day. So thinking about your participant population and really what's going to match their needs and possibly their technical abilities and, other considerations about kind of the method. Then think about how much time are we really willing and able to set aside for this? I think this is often a barrier that's even bigger than the cost itself, because it can be so painful to imagine like, oh my gosh, having somebody take a week or two like out of productive time for them to go off and do this program feels really hard. So, how can you kind of think about like really what's our appetite for the time that we would really be able to have to kind of lose this person's productivity so that they could go do this program. And then, of course, what's your budget? And then what change do we expect to see as a result? So I think having that conversation up front and making it as tangible as possible is really helpful, because then when you later go to look at, did we get a return on investment? You can kind of go back to like, what did we really want out of this program? And are we seeing that change? We'll talk in a moment about how best to kind of quantify that, because often those changes that we're looking for are shifts in behavior or attitudes or productivity or something like that that doesn't necessarily lend itself well to counting. But nonetheless, it's really important for us to really be able to gauge what that impact is. So pause there in terms of just, does that kind of make sense in terms of the questions that you might ask yourself or work with your team on to kind of evaluate kind of where you are and what you might need. All right, fantastic. Seeing a thumbs up. And for some reason, I'm not able to see the chat right now. So if there is something in the chat, feel free to come off of mute and share it. Don't want to miss anything. So one thing that I have used in the past in kind of, either internally with my own programs or working with clients is to use some kind of systematic approach to evaluating the pros and cons to any particular set of programs that we're looking at. So here is a very, very simple spreadsheet, a ranking tool that you could use to kind of look at how those different criteria stack up against a different program. So what this requires kind of on the front end is to look at some options. And, this is kind of a, Google search, maybe it's asking around, maybe it's looking at what you already have in your organization, but collecting some options that that you have available. Kind of listing out what those options are, capturing some kind of basic information about them. How long are they? What's the cost per person? So forth. So then you kind of look at each one and you score it as, recognizing this is somewhat subjective, but you score it as best you can in terms of how well it aligns with those goals that you set out in that kind of previous thought process, in that previous discussion. So in this theoretical example, if option one, it was just a month long, it was about $500 a person, you kind of looked at the topics and you said, well, this one kind of, it's, meets many of our topics, maybe not all of them. So it's about a 3. This is on a 5-point scale. So you kind of fill out this spreadsheet and then it helps it score it for you. Because these criteria are not necessarily equal in your mind, so it might be really, really important to you that you get a program that very much aligns with all of your goals. So you might weight that one more heavily than you would another. If it's really important to you that the time investment, like we really have to have it be, less than this amount of time, you might weight that one more heavily. So you can adjust the percentages that are here on this row. And that will then, multiplies according to your score, gives you the total score and then the weighted score, just to help you, really objectively look at what the variances and those kind of trade-offs might be between a different, between a set of, a suite of programs that you're looking at. So I'll just kind of pause there and see if that kind of makes sense in terms of like just a way to kind of look at the trade-offs.
Yeah, sorry, is it okay just to go ahead and
Yes,
speak?
yeah, absolutely.
So I use and look at the Kirkpatrick model for evaluating training, and a lot of it is, or a portion of it is the implementation on the job, right? Seeing the return on investment for your training. That is so hard in leadership training. What are your thoughts on that, on how you measure that in this kind of evaluation on what you want to implement?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so one of the things I like to do is a pre and a post survey. So you can survey 2 kind of key populations and you give them a baseline survey and then the same question kind of maybe at the end, but usually maybe 6 months after, so that there's some kind of runtime after the training is complete. But you ask a series of questions about kind of those that tie back to those changes that you want to see. So what are the behaviors? And you say, the questions are things like, my level of confidence in planning and holding, crucial conversations, and you kind of rate that. So kind of list out those kind of key topic areas or those goals that you had, ask people to self-assess, kind of doing kind of baseline up front. And then, like I said, maybe 6 months kind of after the completion of the training to see, kind of gauge any kind of any difference there. So that's one population. You can do the participants themselves. And then of course you can do their direct supervisors. So similar line of questions, like, when you, kind of reflecting on your observations of this person's performance, like how have those changed? So it doesn't take all of the subjectivity out of it. However, it does give you some quantifiable data to look at a comparison of where you're seeing shifts. So I'm a big fan of surveys. I think there's also some other things that we can, like proxy measures that we can look at. You could look at things like employee turnover, or just maybe on the more positive side, kind of retention rates. Might look at, for people who are kind of in a more business environment or like, sticking to budgets or, sales or something like that. So there are some proxy measures that you can pull in that I think are interesting to look at, though it's, cautioning just to, do kind of like a correlation or a causal relationship there, but you can absolutely use those.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. All right. And I do have, after this call, I'll be able to share with you, to the extent that it's helpful, this little spreadsheet that I put together. So just as a template that you can modify for your purposes. All right. So this kind of brings me to kind of the close here of what I have. So, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but, any characteristics that you're looking for in terms of leadership development programs, what challenges, are you facing in your organization when either selecting or implementing leadership development? So either questions. I'm actually going to stop the share here so I can fully see the chat. So, all right. Any thoughts there in terms of challenges you're facing or kind of, things that you're looking for out of your leadership development programs?
Voice or chat, Robin? What would you prefer?
Yeah. Oh, voice would be great. Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of highlighted earlier about, finding those gems. So what I'm looking for is things that can be easily accessible for people to self-identify as their needs. And then my favorite part of leadership training is the self awareness and evaluation portions of leadership training. All of the, and pick one: Myers-Briggs, TKI, Strength Finders, business chemistry. All of those things that get people to look internally at themselves, I think, are the most crucial aspects of programs. So any leadership program that doesn't have one of those, I kind of shy away from those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I think, and Rob, that's such a great point and something to add to the consideration of your question just about measuring the impact. So there are a couple of assessments out there that I've just been playing with a little bit on gauging emotional intelligence and that self-awareness. And that could be another one, kind of doing like a pre and a post, how does somebody's kind of self-awareness or their emotional intelligence kind of score prior to the program? Then they would go through one of those self-awareness or evaluation kind of assessments, strengths or MBTI, as you mentioned. And then, a couple months into it, has it sparked some curiosity about, how they think or, what motivates them in a way that's kind of helping build on their self-awareness? So you could kind of do a pre and a post.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And one of those where you how you see yourself, how others see you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of tests as well. How I see myself before I go through this training, and then after that training, do the assessment again. How I see myself. That was a good one as well. Good thoughts.
Yeah, like identifying those blind spots. Fantastic. Well, good. Well, I think that's super helpful. Shelley, I don't know if you had anything else to add or wanted to jump in here. Just give you a moment. So one thing I will that I will share after the call, I have put together this kind of checklist. So if you are looking to, now this would be if you were developing something internally. So kind of a checklist that you might go through in putting a program together. So I'll get that out to you. And then I will also share that little spreadsheet, for ranking the pros and cons of different programs. But I just wanted to thank you both so much for calling in today. I have a couple more of these webinars planned next. I think next week we'll be talking about coaching and mentoring. Then we'll be talking about emotional intelligence, Rob, to your question the week after that. And then we'll, I think the next one I have planned is on succession planning. So yeah, just continue to kind of monitor LinkedIn or email to kind of hear more about what's coming up. But I so appreciate you all spending a little time with me today, this Thursday. And I guess any final questions before we hang up?
Robin, I just want to thank you for putting this on, and calendar willing, I'm going to try to attend a couple more of your ones in the future. I like the topics you have selected. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, have a good day and talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye.